Farm Transparency Project. Just to get a sense, who is aware of Farm Transparency Project? Okay, cool. For people who aren't, is anyone aware of the film Dominion? Yes, the documentary, amazing. Okay, so Farm Transparency Project is the organisation behind Dominion. It was written, directed and edited by our founding director and my current co-director, Chris Delforce. Chris and I run Farm Transparency Project now. And we're a animal rights organisation. We focus on investigating commercial animal use. Before I dive into the presentation, I want to do something it's very common in Australia, but yeah, so I just want to do an acknowledgement of country. So I want to acknowledge that I'm doing this presentation on the unceded, traditional, ancestral and contemporary homelands of the federally recognised Cloverdale Rancheria Pomo Indians, Federated Indians of Grattan Rancheria, Cassia Band of the Stewarts, Point Rancheria, Lytton Band of Pomo Indians, and Dry Creek Rancheria Pomo Indians, as well as Miwok, Pomo and Wapo tribes that are not currently federally recognised. I want to acknowledge that often these lands were taken by genocide and forced removal, and I want to recognise the repeated violations of sovereignty, territory and water perpetuated by colonisers who uprooted the original inhabitants of this land. So before I start, I want to acknowledge these people, this land, and recognise elders past and present. So thank you for being here. I only have an hour, so I'm going to basically do a really quick overview of our investigations over the last 2 years. And then I'm going to spend as much time as I can diving into our investigative techniques. You can see some of our equipment here. So I hope I'll have time for questions at the end. If not, I'm around. Some of you have already met me, some talk to me, and I'm always happy to talk and chat and answer questions. So just really quickly, Farm Transparency Project was founded back in 2014. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year, and originally was founded under the name Aussie Farms. We're a non-profit animal protection charity, and we're dedicated to ending the abuse and exploitation of animals in farms, slaughterhouses, and other commercial settings. We do this through investigations, documentary films, video content, and photographs. Because our belief is that the more we can get the reality of what happens to animals in farms and slaughterhouses and other commercial use settings out there to the public, the more change we can make. Something that a lot of people aren't aware of about FTP is that we've never just been, a documentary or campaigns. We have our website, which you can see up on the screen, and we aim for this website to be a complete one-stop shop for anyone who wants to learn about commercial animal use. So we have a repository containing tens of thousands of photos from around the world, which is filtered and can be sorted by a bunch of, a lot of tags. So you can essentially go to any practice that you want to learn more about, or you want to get a photo or a video of. You can see that you can search by species, by category. We have that for videos as well. We have a knowledge base, which has a whole bunch of information about animals used for food, pets, wildlife, entertainment, etc. We also have our campaigns and our investigations up on our website, and we really encourage everyone to use this as a resource for their own activism. Everything's free, everything's available to be downloaded and used, including campaign materials. Something else that we do is we have what's known as the Farm Transparency Project map. This was, again, developed by our director, Chris Delforce, who taught himself to code to build this from scratch. Essentially, back when he started doing investigations, he realized that there was no central resource that allowed investigators or the general public to understand the scale of these industries and where they are happening. It was really kind of if you know, you know. If you were part of an animal rights group, everyone would kind of know there's a chicken farm here, there's a pig farm here. But if you were trying to get information about that, it was really hard. So he created this map. It was over 8 years in development. It launched in 2018 to big media attention. They called it a hit map. especially because the symbol for a slaughterhouse is a bloody axe, and they were like, they're going to kill the farmers. We were not going to kill the farmers. Yeah, you can see it's kind of this big look. It's also filtered, you can filter it by category, by species. And what is really kind of unique about it as well is if you go to any facility, you can not only see details about the facility, but that's not a great example because no one's ever been there. If you are logged in and you have an account, you can make your own submissions. If you're just a general member of the public, let's go to one that I've been to. Ralph's, okay. So if I go to Ralph's Meats, which we exposed back in 2013, I can see that there's all the information about it. There's a short description. There's notes from activists. These are actually my private notes, so you can't see them if you go in, but it's literally an overview of every time we've been there, so please don't read them. It's very sensitive information. We installed cameras at 2:30 a.m. on this date. But you can also, this is all public, you can see photos, videos, and if you go to the actual link to the place, that's all available. Very laid out, very nice. So this is like what we are as Farm Transparency Project. We, through comprehensive investigations, documentary films, and the creation of these innovative tools and resources, we want to force this industry transparency and educate consumers about what animals in these facilities experience. So, jumping into our campaigns, over the last 2.5 years, we've really focused on 3 issues: pigs and pig farms in Australia, slaughterhouses across Australia, and the dairy industry. So I'm going to really quickly as I can, speed through our campaigns. And one thing I want to focus on, and this was in the name of the presentation, is our campaign, our pledge to investigate and expose 30 slaughterhouses over 2 years. If you see, this is actually the first time I can wear this shirt in public because we've finally released the 30th today. So this is our campaign t-shirt. And if you look on the back, it has a list of all the slaughterhouses we exposed and where they are. And I'm currently working on a report into this showing the frequency of different forms of cruelty, illegal activity, and just, horrific systemic animal abuse. So this all started back in January 2023 when we decided that we wanted to reinvestigate the Victoria's 3 largest pig slaughterhouses, which all use carbon dioxide gas chambers to kill pigs. So we installed hidden cameras inside these chambers, and we also installed our founder, Chris, in one of these chambers for over 9.5 hours, where he filmed the gassing of pigs with his handheld camera. Wow. This got widespread national media coverage. It was followed by a week of action, march, like we did yesterday, and the disruption and shutdown of one of the facilities for over 10 hours. It also led to the Victorian state government calling for a state inquiry, parliamentary inquiry into pig welfare in the country, and to one of the 3 facilities being shut down. They voluntarily chose to shut down rather than install CCTV cameras as a condition of their license, which, don't know what that says. So after this campaign, we visited, yes, there's some photos of Chris in the chamber and of what he was filming. So after this campaign, we were determined to capture footage of the other methods used to stun pigs other than gassing. This is electric stunning and the use of a bolt gun or a rifle. So we went to South Australia, which is just another state of Australia. It's quite a small state, but it's also one of the big pig growers in And we released this pledge to investigate and expose 30 Australian slaughterhouses in the next 2 years.
Wow.
So we essentially put them on notice. We said, we're going to do this, try and stop us if you don't want us to. This started with investigating 5 slaughterhouses in Tasmania. This is Australia's smallest state, and the 5 we investigated was actually a quarter of the state's slaughter facilities. The ones we investigated included Tasmania's largest sheep and bobby calf slaughterhouse. So these are bobby calves in the holding pen at Tasmanian Quality Meats, which kills all of the state's 5 to 7 day old in Tasmania, 7 day old bobby calves, so male and unwanted female calves of the dairy industry. We also exposed their largest pig slaughterhouse and 3 others, including one which was owned by the 2023 Tasmanian of the Year, so she was granted that award. She also said that if she didn't win Australian of the Year, she was going to sue us, but she didn't because she didn't really do anything. So this led to unprecedented mainstream media coverage, and I'm going to just show one of the videos.
Tonight, the fallout from Secret Vision filmed inside Tasmanian abattoirs. Good evening, Alexandra Alvaro with ABC News. A day after secret footage from inside Tasmanian abattoirs was shown, there are loud calls for greater regulation of the industry, including mandatory CCTV. Both the state and federal governments are now investigating footage obtained by activists which highlighted animal welfare issues at 5 sites. And a warning, this story contains vision which shows calves and sheep in distress. Adam Holmes reports.
Under the cover of darkness, activists installed cameras in 5 Tasmanian abattoirs. What they discovered shocked animal advocates who complained about alleged animal cruelty to federal and state authorities.
Yeah, so this was the top story on, so ABC is an Australian broadcasting company. I know you have your own ABC. It's the nationally kind of funded broadcasting company. It was the top story on all of the news, TV news across Tasmania for a week. It led to lots of media coverage, extended media coverage, and it did actually lead to the leadership of the state kind of coming forward, initiating a task force, which was led by the industry. But it did actually lead to mandatory CCTV being implemented, and which we always say is useless. And I've said to many people, well, they're not watching it because otherwise they would have seen us installing cameras in front of it. I literally installed a camera in front of, on top of one of their security cameras at one of the Tasmanian facilities. Hello. But what it does do is then when we expose them again, we can say, well, this did nothing. So Tasmania, oh, it's gonna play again. Okay, after Tasmania, we started working on virtual tours, which I'm gonna kind of get up again. So using like innovations in 360 video technology, we started creating these virtual tours of farms and slaughterhouses. So this is a piggery that we investigated last year, Eco Piggery, which I'm going to talk about in a bit actually, because it's quite a funny story. So these are compatible with VR headsets. They can also be used on devices. They're a bit slow with shitty internet, so apologies here, but they're all on our website. And what you can do is all of these little arrows take you into one of the places. So this takes you right inside, and you can click on any of these arrows, and I can go in this room, and then when I'm in there, it's 360 video, which takes a little while to load, by the way, but there we go. So I can move around within the shed, see everything, and can, take a step this way. In some cases you can go into the pen, because we've shot a video in the pen. So we tried to, this is what we see as the most immersive way. It's takes away that argument that, oh, well, the footage is just one instance or something like that, because you're there, this is exactly, you can watch little videos as well. So that was something that we did after Tasmania, just also kind of continuing that mission to make these industries as transparent as possible. Last year, at the start of last year, we released our dairy campaign. I'm going to play this just in the background. So in Tasmania, we captured obviously bobby calf footage, but we also captured on drone footage of the separation of dairy calves, and including some really harrowing shots of mother calves chasing after the trailers. This has been captured before by groups really powerfully, but we felt that this was a really powerful way to get this footage using drones, and this campaign allowed us to start doing a range of different actions around the dairy industry, and also myself and other team members worked on an education campaign, which is on our YouTube channel, about the realities of the dairy industry, including separation of calves from their mothers and the killing of newborn calves. And yeah, you can see there, that's the mother chasing after her calf and then calling out for her. Go to the next slide. So in 2024, we investigated 6 Victorian slaughterhouses, including getting Australian first footage of commercial rabbit slaughter. I don't have a photo of that there. But the things we captured there were the slaughter of spent dairy cows at Ralph's Meats, which is an export-approved cow slaughterhouse. We caught horrific animal abuse and cruelty at Wangaratta, Gathacole's Wangaratta, and at MD Foods in Echuca, which is where those sheep are from. We also caught the killing of bobby calves, sheep and goats, including newborn baby goats, at Cedar Meats in Victoria. We also, at that place, we saw horrific things like workers using the blood of sheep to write their names on sheep. You can see there, this guy wrote his name, Pete, as they were lying there after having their throat slit, leaving bloody handprints on the bodies of sheep, and even eating dismembered body parts from sheep and goats while in the kill room. Again, this led to a lot of local media, mainly for the different ones, and a bunch of different actions that we organised, including vigils and disruptions at, like Ralph's Meats had a stall at a market in Melbourne, and we did a disruption there. All of this is a bit of a trigger warning, but I'm going to give a particular trigger warning here, because I'm going to talk briefly about Olivia, the pig. In 2024, in February, investigators installed cameras at Midland Bacon to get routine, standard legal practice of what happens to pigs on commercial pig farms in Victoria. This was to give evidence at the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry into Pig Welfare that I mentioned earlier, because both Chris and myself were called to give evidence. While these cameras were installed, they captured the sexual assault and rape of Olivia, a sow who was confined to a farrowing crate. This act was performed by the son of the piggery's manager. So this, we obviously reported straight away to the police and removed our cameras, and then we went to the media. And Olivia's story was told on an ABC 7:30 story, so this is like a more in-depth news broadcast. And they also shared the footage of piglet tail cutting and thumping, so the killing of runt piglets by blunt force trauma. After we uncovered this footage and released it, and it was released through the media, it's led to a global movement for calling on Olivia to be freed from the pig farm. This is photos from a protest which we held outside Midland Bacon, calling for her to be released, and it was there that the owner actually came up and told us that she had been moved. So we spent a long time trying to look for her, using freedom of information requests, going to pig farms and searching for her, manually sending out thousands of flyers to nearby suburbs offering a reward for any information about her whereabouts. And unfortunately we couldn't find her, but we, to this date, have rescued 6 piglets in her honour. So I'm actually reading this and it says 3 piglets in her honour, which is funny because this was written a little while ago and we've continued to rescue those piglets, and we have some more planned as well, so stay tuned. So in 2024, the day after the ABC News story was released, Chris and I presented evidence at the parliamentary inquiry, and 3 members of the inquiry actually chose to walk out rather than hear or see our evidence because they didn't believe that it should be shown because it was illegally captured. Despite this, we still gave our evidence and were questioned by the committee, and this led to a bunch of media articles about us calling for, well, in his media interview, Chris kind of carelessly said a phase out of the pig industry in 2 years, and then that was in dozens of articles, and I was like, you're going to stick with that? And he was like, look, I don't really know, it's pretty quick, but I mean, I guess we have to say it now. So we're calling it a phase out of the pork industry in 2 years in Australia. That's what we're wanting. Also, during the parliamentary inquiry, and this is going to show you how petty we are, this man, David Wright, spoke with 2 Victorian pork producers, and he talked about how high welfare and great his farm is, it has no sow stalls, how highly secure it is, it's temperature regulated, it's so all this. And we were like, we don't believe you. So we went and investigated his farm. And let's see if I can get it up. It's called Eco Piggery. And despite him saying that, activists pose a threat to, families, he actually had no property on the farm. It was just pig sheds, so there was no one living there. And despite him saying it was incredibly highly secure, we actually managed to go there on a number of occasions and take photos and footage and a complete 360 tour of the place. The footage we found led to him...
has a collective commitment to pig welfare. Our members adhere to industry best practices.
So he was the president of the Victorian Pork Industries Pig Welfare.
To improve animal care standards.
So, yes, you don't have...
No, I don't have sow stalls, sorry.
So neither of you have...
Just mating stalls.
And you're both option A accredited under APIC.
That's correct, yes.
No sow stalls. I don't know what these are. So Benalla Abattoir was one of the 3 that we investigated in January 2023, and he co-owns this pig farm. Stop it there. But yeah, this led to him temporarily stepping down as president of the Pig Welfare Fund. And Agriculture Victoria, who kind of regulates these places, found that our complaint was substantiated, meaning that it was all accurate, but they decided they didn't want to impose any penalties, but they sent a formal letter of warning to David Wright. So, what else could we expect? Last year as well, we were taken to court by the Game Meats Company, which was Slaughterhouse number 17. They sued us in the federal court, essentially trying to suppress our footage of their facility, which showed goats being killed while still conscious, and workers, hitting and kicking goats and hitting them with brooms. And also the slaughter of newborn baby goats, which was done with electric prongs, which led to these goats remaining alive but partially paralysed for hours after this was done. This trial revealed corruption at the heart of the Federal Department of Agriculture, and specifically they have these on-plant veterinarians who had reports during the time our cameras were installed showing what they admitted in court were breaches of animal welfare, but his reports showed that no breaches were recorded during this time. So we had a trial last year, a week-long trial, and in December the judgment was handed down that they could not suppress our footage from being published, but that because of the egregious nature of our crimes, we would be fined $130,000 in damages. Conversion to American, I'm not sure, but about $100,000. They actually then appealed that judgment, because they believe that our footage should be suppressed, so we'll be going to another trial in August, a one-day trial, where we chose to appeal the amount of those damages. So earlier in this year, in January, we released an investigation into 20 Victorian piggeries over one weekend. So we had multiple teams going out and investigating piggeries across Victoria. We also collected the bodies of piglets from each of these facilities and then had a protest the day after that weekend, after releasing the footage, where we laid those piglets on the step of the Victorian Minister for Agriculture. So this, again, got quite a lot of media coverage because of the sheer scale over such a small amount of time. And what we were showing with this was that, when we're capturing footage over a large amount of time, this isn't like us cherry picking the worst possible things. Like, this is just one weekend, and we saw things like mother sows being eaten alive by rats and rat-infested sheds, and sick and dying piglets. Last year, in August and September, we investigated 7 Queensland slaughterhouses, and we released these earlier in the year alongside a big article in the Queensland ABC. I'm just going to play a little bit of this video. Yes, and those are the bodies of cows. Again, horrific acts of animal abuse, animal cruelty, animals being killed while fully conscious after escaping into the kill room. At one slaughterhouse, a sheep was seen being stabbed 7 times by a worker after escaping to the kill room and then being decapitated while fully conscious. The same slaughterhouse, pigs were seen drowning in the scalding tank after being tipped into it while still alive and conscious. So this led us up to 26 slaughterhouses. And then for the remainder of this year, we released the final 4 Victorian slaughterhouses. 3 of them were in New South Wales and 1 was in Victoria. This included a slaughterhouse which is actually being released today, Cowra Slaughterhouse in New South Wales, where we captured pig guessing again. And we also investigated the only duck and chicken slaughterhouses that we had during the 30. Again, showed horrific animal abuse, animals being killed while still fully conscious. So, I'm going to move on now, but I want to say that, I know all of this is really hard to see sometimes, and I appreciate you all being here, and I'm someone who believes that, we're all already on the side of being vegan, and I used to avoid watching footage myself before I got this job. And I totally understand that, and I know people who choose to avoid watching footage, and I think that's so fine. What we always ask is that people share it, and also learn what they can about it, even if they can't watch it, like even if you can just quote what happens in the footage. I think that's really important. So yes, thank you all for bearing with me. There will be no more graphic footage throughout the rest of this investigation. So I want to talk a little bit now about our techniques as investigators. So we use a range of techniques, both legal and not so legal. Everything that we use is legal in its own right. Like, you can buy it legally online or in stores. The only thing that becomes illegal is when we use it on private property. So I'm legally not encouraging anyone to trespass or install hidden cameras, but I am going to talk about my own experience trespassing on animal exploitation facilities and installing hidden cameras. So don't take this as telling you to go do this, but if you were going to do this, you might find some of this information useful. So, one of our favourite tools are drones. I don't have any drones here with me today, unfortunately, but I'm going to talk about our favourite drones and why they're such a good investigative tool. Drones have really changed the game for investigators. A lot of the time you can capture footage which back in the day you would have only been able to get if you were undercover. So for instance, the separation of calves in the dairy industry, before we started using drones for this was mainly gathered by people who were undercover on farms or working on farms and, you know, being like, this is awful, I'm going to film it. That's obviously limited. You're limited in the angles you can get, you're limited in the quality of cameras if they're hidden on your body, whereas drones have incredible camera capacity, and they also allow you to get views of things, again, you couldn't get, showing the scale of things like feedlots or fish farms. So drones these days are really fantastic. We exclusively use DJI drones. I know that there's a lot of talk about them potentially being banned in America, but while you have them, make use of them because they are wonderful. So our main drone is the DJI Mavic 3. The Mavic 3 Pro is also used by some of our investigators who we collaborate with. There's also the 4 Pro, which just came out, has a few more capabilities, but mainly for like steadier footage and like lots more swivel stuff on the gimbal that holds the camera. So the Mavic 3 has incredible zoom capacity. So if you're using the regular 3, the classic, you can have either 1 time or 7 times zoom. And this is optical zoom. For those of you who don't know the difference between optical and digital zoom, so it's basically the difference between, you know, if you see a camera, and this is 24-70, my lens, which means that I can zoom it by going like this, and you can see that my actual lens is getting bigger, and that's like changing the focal length of my camera. So that's optical zoom. That's what you want. That's like if your eyes, you know, in cartoons when they like bug out of your head, like that's like your eyes getting closer to something essentially. Digital zoom is when like digitally like the camera is like zooming in, so it's not as good quality, but it can be a lot higher. So if you're filming something, you want, you know, optical zoom, but if you're like reconning something, you might want to just like zoom in really close and it's all like degraded and pixelated, but it's still kind of closer. So essentially this means that if you're something, you know, 500 meters away from something, you can see it both at that distance, like what your eyes could see or what the camera can see from 500 meters away, and you can also zoom in and see it 7 times clearer, more closer. They're relatively lightweight and quiet. All of our drones that we use, you don't need a commercial drone license to fly. It depends on the laws in different areas, but for most parts it's based on weight. And they have 28 times optical zoom, so if you really need to get in close. There's pros and cons of smaller versus bigger drones. All of these, well, 2 of these we have, and 1 of these is quite commonly used. So the Mini there's a Mini 4 Pro out now. I knew some people had some Mini at the march yesterday. This is, it has all of these cameras are 4K and can film up to like 60 or 50 frames per second. Essentially, this is all just based on the quality of the footage. So 4K is like how many pixels are in the image. And they all have some level of zoom, but I'm going to kind of go through the main differences. So the Mini is great for like small actions, but what you lose with the smaller drone is you lose the height you can fly, you lose the quality of the image. So the Mini only has digital zoom. It also has a lower battery life. It says it has a 20-kilometer range. Our drones have 15 kilometers. Really, your range, which is how far you can go before you can't connect to it with the remote, is like max 3 kilometers. Then it starts being like, I can't reach you anymore. So good for small actions. You can fly low to the ground. You can, get like close-up stuff. The bigger you go, the louder you get. But the cameras and the durability improves, as does the zoom. So as I've already talked about the Mavic, which is our main zoom, we've also just recently purchased a Matrice. This is like a $12,000 drone. It has up to 8K photos, so these are even higher quality than 4K. It has a wide camera and a zoom camera and a thermal camera. It's also weatherproof, whereas other drones can't be flown in the rain. And it has up to 16 times optical zoom. So if you think about 7 times zoom of the other one, this means that you can be even further away and get the same image. So again, like looking at these photos, you can see the different kind of zooms. So this is 7 times, so 16 times is even closer. We think drones are fantastic and they should be used more. We just released an investigation into dairy factory farms in Australia. 2 of these we visited on foot. The others we investigated had 24-hour security driving around the facilities, and we couldn't go on foot, but with the use of drones, we were able to get footage that showed their scale, showed the cows in the sheds in daylight as well, so it's even in some ways better than being there at night. Handheld cameras. So on a given night out, we might have any number of different cameras to capture footage of animals or machinery or equipment. I'm going to talk quickly through some of the ones that I use. I've already shown you this is my Sony a7 III, but really they used to be called DSLR cameras, but now this is a mirrorless camera. I'm not a camera expert, so all these are just words to me. All you really need to know is that these cameras can get professional quality footage and photos, clear, sharp images, and you can change the settings yourself. The thing about them is they take more skill to use and they're a bit less portable. Another thing we very often use are GoPros. A lot of you in here might have a GoPro. This is a Hero 9. They're up to 13 now. Essentially, what gets better is the sensors, so you can do more low light stuff. So essentially, while I can change the settings on this and make it pretty clear in low light, once I get into a semi-dark room with a GoPro, you can't see anything. So that footage of the rabbits is shot with a GoPro. The footage of me in the shed is with this one, the Sony. Sony's great in low light. If you're considering purchasing a camera and want to do investigative work, I definitely recommend the Sony A7 series. Fantastic with low light and also versatile for photos and video. So yeah, GoPros are fantastic. We often have chest harnesses. You can also get head harnesses, but they look a bit dorky. And these are great for behind the scenes footage, daylight and actions as well, because in daylight they're super clear, 4K footage, all of these are 4K, but there's less customization of images, not as good footage, not good for photography. Something else I use, and you can see it over there, is a little handy cam. This has a crazy optical zoom on it, very smooth. I can get up to 30 times optical zoom. So if you're doing recon, you're what is that over there? Sometimes we've used it to drive past a place and zoom in on the security booth to see if there's someone in there. It's a bit not great in low light. So something I'm going to talk about in the next slide a little bit is there's a difference between resolution and frame rate. And there's also a difference between bit rate. And bitrate is kind of the most important thing when you're thinking about good quality footage. So you can have a 4K image, but bitrate is essentially how much data is packed into that image. You can have a 4K image with a low bitrate, and it's going to be not as good to look at as a 1080 image, so less pixels, but more data packed into it. So this, again, not great in low light, but what it does have is a night mode, night shot mode, so you can see things in the dark, like using infrared. Great for behind the scenes, also great to just like look around. We also use night vision for this. Other things we use are DJI Osmos. I think I saw some people with them at the march yesterday. They're really great little stabilized cameras, which you can just carry around. They have their own like little gimbal. So this is really good for really smooth footage. There's obviously these, like this, it has a bit of stabilization inside. Same with the handheld, same with this, but they're kind of, if you're moving, they're moving, whereas this stabilizes itself. And we also use Insta360. These are 360 cameras, as you can probably guess from the name. Something to say about 360 cameras, if you're using them in a dark place, you need a 360 light, which we didn't realize. Most of the time, we're using a video light like this, turns on like this, can adjust the brightness, just sits on top of your camera on a little hot shoe, cold shoe. That's the cold shoe actually, it doesn't have power. And this is, I wouldn't be able to get footage in a dark place without this. Even if the place looks like it has some light, video lights are a lifesaver, but for this you need like a fucking lightsaber looking 360 light. And we didn't realize this the first time we tried to get 360 footage somewhere, then we're like, oh yeah, the back of this is all dark. Damn. So, moving on to hidden cameras. Hoping I have enough time as this is fun stuff. And this is where I'm going to ask the live stream to potentially... Yeah. So I'm going to be giving you some of our trade secrets.